What is up, guys? It is RSC6414 here, back with another video. This time I'm reviewing tonight's episode of Impact. First Impact review for me in about 3 weeks. The reason behind that is because the past 2 weeks I did not see live, and by the time I got around to watching both shows, it had already been a couple days and no one would watch the review. So that's why I did not review those. I apologize. Just been busy a lot lately. But now let's go ahead and get to the review. Tonight was the New York City, the final of the final show in the Manhattan Center of New York City for now. I'm guaranteed they'll be going back there eventually because they got a good feedback from it. This was the Gold Rush tournament. You had 5 matches. Each of the 5 winners would face off in a 5-man match. The winner would be the official #1 contender to the championship of his choosing, and that's how it would all go down. The first match we had was MVP versus Loki, 2 friends on a personal level outside of wrestling, so this was cool. This match was good. Good way to open up the show. You had some stiff style wrestling here, some cool spots by Loki to the outside, just an entertaining match. I thought honestly this was the best match of the first round matches that they had. Just a fun opening contest. MVP would eventually hit the drive by his finisher for the 1, 2, 3. MVP would advance to the final match later on in the night after he defeats Loki. Then we'd have a video package. There were a lot of video packages on this show. It was overall decent, but it seemed like more of a filler show, and it had a lot of video packages. That was my complaint. But you can't always put out a good show every single week. It's hard, but this show was decent. Next, you have a segment with the Bromans and Robbie E talking about Velvet and Angelina. Robbie talks about how he's going after Brooke too. So he's got 2 people, Velvet and Brooke, and the camera zooms in on him. He sees the camera and runs. So looks like we'll probably be seeing a Brooke versus Velvet angle, and probably Brooke will eventually win because they're dating in real life in the first place. Next thing we had, Tajiri versus Robbie E, the second of the Gold Rush tournament first round matches. Tajiri, squash match. That's all I'm going to say. Robbie E comes out. He gets heel heat by putting New Jersey over in New York. Tajiri comes out. They face off. Tajiri spits green mist in Robbie E's face when the ref gets takes a ref bump, gets knocked down, doesn't see. Tajiri hits the green mist in Robbie E's face, kicks him with the buzzsaw kick for the 1, 2, 3. Tajiri defeats Robbie E and advances to the next round. Then we've got Spud backstage talking on the phone with EC3. You can overhear him saying, "Don't hang up, don't hang up." EC3 hangs up on Spud. We find out later on the show that there's going to be a confrontation between EC3 and Spud, so we'll figure out what happens there. Not too sure what to expect. Maybe Spud gets beat the crap out of. Maybe he gets kicked to the curb. Maybe he gets fired. Who the hell knows? But we'll find out next week. Then we've got Austin Aries versus Nux, the third of the first round matches. In my opinion, this was probably the second best first round match. This was good. Nux surprised me. It was some good wrestling. Honestly, I enjoyed this match. Better match than I expected. Both men were giving it their all. The match delivered. Basically, you had the menagerie ringside, obviously. Austin Aries would eventually hit the brain buster. You had Nux doing drop kicks, stuff you haven't seen from him as a big guy a lot in TNA, so that was cool seeing him pull some moves out of the hat you wouldn't expect. Austin Aries would eventually hit the brain buster finisher for the 1, 2, 3. He'd take out Nux, and Austin Aries would advance as well. We'd have 3 of the 5 competitors announced for the final after that point. Next match, we'd have the 4th first round match of the Gold Rush tournament, Mr. Anderson versus Magnus. This match, the crowd seemed dead. I guess they were tired of, I don't know exactly what time it was at the tapings in Manhattan when they taped it. It was probably sometime after 11. I can understand why they didn't really give a shit about this match or seem to give a shit. The crowd just was really quiet. There wasn't a huge crowd pop. It took away from the match. I was expecting, honestly, a better match from this. It didn't get a whole lot of time. It seemed like I turned away for a second and turned back, and the match was over. It just didn't seem like it had much there, in my opinion. Mr. Anderson would eventually hit the mic check for the 1, 2, 3. He'd advance. I was surprised. I thought Magnus was going to win this match and be put in that final match, but Mr. Anderson picks up the win here. What are you going to do? Not too many complaints, just the crowd was dead, and it didn't seem to last that long. There wasn't too many highlights throughout that match, but Anderson picks up the win. And then we would have a Team 3D video package for their TNA Hall of Fame induction, showing the past history of them in TNA and their achievements. That was a pretty cool video package. I enjoyed that. You then have the final first round match of the New York City Gold Rush Tournament, Abyss versus Samuel Shaw. This match was boring as shit. I didn't really give a fuck about it, honestly. It was just, the crowd was dead here. For the last 3 matches of the show, they were dead. I can't blame them, really. It's a lot of wrestling. I wouldn't have been dead, but, you know, that's just me personally. When I go to wrestling shows, I act like an idiot and scream and shout. But it's another story for another time. But this match was, it just didn't seem like anyone gave a crap about it in the crowd. Abyss versus Samuel Shaw. The match really wasn't anything that stuck out here either. Samuel Shaw, I'm not a huge fan of his to begin with. Abyss, I do like, but obviously he's older, and besides the hardcore matches, it's harder to watch Abyss matches these days. Abyss would eventually hit the black hole slam on Samuel Shaw for the 1, 2, 3, and Abyss would advance to the final match of the night. The 5 competitors, give a quick rundown: Austin Aries, MVP, Abyss, Mr. Anderson, and Tajiri in a 5-way match, the finals of the New York City Gold Rush Tournament. Turn a title match of his choosing. This was a tag style match where you tag yourself in. This was the final match. We'd have Austin Aries versus MVP versus Abyss versus Mr. Anderson versus Tajiri. 5-way match, like I mentioned. This match was entertaining for what it's worth. The crowd didn't care. It took away a little bit from the match. This was entertaining. It was good wrestling. Got about 15 minutes. I enjoyed it for the most part. It wasn't anything great, but it wasn't terrible. It was entertaining for what it was worth. There were some moments each guy kind of came in, got tagged in, did their typical move set, would eventually get tagged out. There'd be certain points where you thought maybe it was at the end. And basically MVP would hit the drive-by on Mr. Anderson at one point for the 1, 2, and the pinfall would get broken up by Austin Aries. I thought that first second MVP had the win in the bag. Then MVP later on in the match, you had eventually some high spots. The rest of the guys would be taken out. MVP would go for Austin Aries, would try and hit the drive-by on Aries. Austin Aries would counter, move out of the way. He would roll. He would counter the drive-by, like I said, with a roll-up pinfall on MVP. Austin Aries, 1, 2, 3. Austin Aries gets the roll-up pinfall for the win, picks up the win. Austin Aries wins the New York City Gold Rush Tournament, advances. He doesn't advance anywhere, what am I saying? He wins the tournament. He gets to choose the title of his choice for the #1 contendership, so he becomes the #1 contender of some title. They say at the end of the show, they tell us we find out next week which title he's going to choose to try and go after. And we'll see what happens from there. I'm going to guess he goes after the X Division Championship. My reasoning behind that is Rude's probably going to go for Lashley's title, the TNA World Heavyweight Championship in the future. I don't think that feud's over. I think Aries is going for the X Division Championship, and he'll probably take it off Joe at some point in the future. Overall, the show was good. I enjoyed it for what it was worth. It was decent. I'm not even going to say it was good. It was decent, mediocre. It seemed a lot like a filler show. The crowd wasn't as into it. But for the New York City shows, most of them, all of them delivered for the past 3 months. Good stuff. Episode wasn't as good as last week's No Surrender special, but this week's episode was still pretty, it was whatever. It had some good matches. Nothing too significant. Some fresh matchups with this Gold Rush tournament gimmick to it. You don't see too many of these Gold Rush things in TNA, so those are interesting match stipulations to put into it. But overall grade I'd give it would be 5.25 out of 10. 5.25 out of 10 is the overall grade I'd give tonight's episode. Nothing spectacular, decent show. Hope you enjoyed this video. Check out my other videos and subscribe. I'll have a review of next week's Impact. RSC 6414 out. Thanks for watching, and deuces.